What's going on, everybody? Happy Wednesday. Welcome to another edition of Mean Streets, powered by FTN right here on Game Plus Network. Chris Meaney here, riding solo with you today. Lots to get to on this program. Yesterday was an awful day in the NHL. One of the worst days I think I've had given picks. I believe we went 1 for 5 on this show yesterday. And that's the thing, right? No consistency. When you have a good day, you got to be able to back it up. So everything that we had on Monday, we gave it all back last night. So hopefully we can rebound here. There's only a couple games on the ice tonight in the NHL. There's a handful of games on the hard court. Maybe we can revisit some picks, visit some picks in the NBA a little bit later on in the show. But we will talk a lot of football today. We got some buy lows, some sell highs. We'll take a look at the most added and the most dropped in Yahoo leagues. We'll take a look at the most traded players in CBS sports leagues over the last 24 hours. Most people have had their waivers run. I've said a few times I really like when they run tonight. You get that extra day of practice reports. Wednesday's huge. Tomorrow we have Thursday night football between the Bucks and the Ravens. And I jumped on the Bucks right away. Actually, maybe not right away. On Monday I didn't, but yesterday I started hearing like Andrews is not practicing, Bateman's not practicing, Tampa, Tom Brady and the Bucks have been awful over the past couple weeks. A couple losses. Both of those games did come on the road though, right? I mean, they return home this Thursday, short week. Ravens, as I mentioned, are going through some things. I think we'll see Tom Brady and the Bucks bounce back. And I took them yesterday at plus money at home. I believe they were 2.5-point dogs, and it's almost a pick 'em now. So I think people are starting to put their money on the Buccaneers. And I know it hasn't looked great in Tampa Bay, that's for sure. But the Bucks, I think that they can get back on track this week. And we'll talk about it tomorrow. Brian Cook's going to jump in. We'll take a look at everything in that game, some touchdowns. And I'm really looking forward to my conversation with Brian because we're basically, halfway through the season here. October, as I mentioned earlier, when the calendar flipped to October, this is the time of the season where you can really get a feel on some of these teams, the pretenders, contenders, who's legit, who's not. I think there's a lot of questions in the NFL, certainly with big teams and like in the Bucks and the Packers and the Rams. Are these guys like good enough to go on a run again this season? And are the Jets and the Giants and the Seahawks actually this good at the game of football? Or have they been a little lucky here? And I think, those three teams are playing really good. We talked about Geno Smith and how accurate he has been to start the season. And with the Giants, the defense, I have a lot of questions with the defense, but the coaching has been fantastic, right? Phenomenal stuff from Brian Daboll and company. Easily the coach of the year so far. I know it's early is what I was trying to say, but we're halfway there. I think if the season ended, he's definitely the coach of the year. I can go on like rookie of the year would be Dameon Pierce, offensive rookie of the year. Sauce Gardner, I think, would be defensive rookie of the year. I think Saquon, we could say, has been the most outstanding offensive player to start the season. I think we could agree with that, right? Him, Jalen Hurts, these two kind of come to mind, have been really good. Eckler's been fantastic over the past couple weeks. It was a slow start from him, but I think he's finished RB1, RB2, RB1 over the last 3 weeks, and he's on bye. The Chargers are on bye this week. So no Austin Eckler. There was some news that sprinkled down yesterday with Mike Williams. He's going to miss some time. Again, the Chargers are on bye. It's a good time to be on bye, but Mike Williams is probably going to miss a good chunk of time. It could be 4 to 6 weeks, potentially with that high ankle sprain. So we'll break here. We will visit the NHL. Hopefully we can bounce back. It doesn't feel too good to give losers. So really hopefully we can give a couple winners on this show, or maybe they just won't keep Mean Streets around. We are pretty happy to be on Game Plus, though. Always a fantastic lineup. Ran through all Jake's rankings. A lot of questions at the running back position. And all in football, it's not great because I'm part of it on Wednesdays and Mondays, but Jake obviously is one of the best rankers in the game. And we had a nice conversation. So it's really nice to have somebody else to have, a convo with some of these players, right? What do you do with the Carolina guys? Are you rolling Michael Carter out with confidence? What are you doing with Gus Bus? Where does he rank? What about other wide receivers? Like, how does the offense look in Indy without Matt Ryan there and Ellinger is the quarterback? Is Paris Campbell going to get the same type of run that he's gotten over the last couple of weeks? Any of those questions, guys, you can leave them here. We'll address them on this show. As I mentioned, there's lots to get to here. We are going to take a look at the Week 8 betting lines because I don't think we did that yesterday. We'll take an early look at that. And I got a list of the most dropped players. And again, like every single week, there's a few names on here that you probably don't want to drop and that you should scoop up if you see them on your waiver wire because, as you guys know, things change in a hurry in the NFL. So we'll take a quick break and we will look at those drop players as well as the most added. Keep her locked. Mean Streets continues here on Game Plus.
At DraftKings Sportsbook, you can bet on nearly any sport imaginable. The NFL, the NBA, college football, college basketball, golf, the NHL, tennis, Major League Baseball, MMA, and more. Download the DK Sportsbook app on iOS and Android operating systems, as well as on your desktops or in mobile browsers. Get the best bonuses using promo code FTN. Remember, the only way to gamble responsibly is to win. Prize Picks is a creative new way to parlay picks based on expected fantasy point production and single stat projections. You pick 2 to 5 players and predict if they'll go over or under their projected fantasy point total or their single stat total. When parlaying the players, the larger your parlay, the better the payout. A 2-pick entry pays 3x. A 3-pick entry pays 5x. A 4-pick entry pays 10x. As a bonus offer, there's a flex play option. This provides an added level of security on your entry where you can decrease your multiplier received if you miss one of your entries but hit on all the others. At FTN, we have Prize Picks coverage for every sport in both article and standalone pick format on our Prize Picks pick tracker. Use promo code FTN for a 100% deposit match on your first deposit of up to $100.
Welcome back in Mean Streets Live on Game Plus Network. Chris Meaney here hanging out with you. Tyler, if you got the Week 8 schedule, I mean, we usually like to look at this earlier in the week, see if we can find any edges. But if you have it handy, check it up. There we go. We can take a look, and I'll give you some, if there's been any line movement, we can talk about that here throughout. So the Thursday night football game, there has been a little bit of line movement. As I mentioned, it was 2.5 here for the Baltimore Ravens when the line opened up, and it is, oh, you see it 1.5. Okay, so there's been a little bit of just a little bit of line movement. I see the Ravens at 1 in some spots, but I actually like the Bucs here in this game. And you know, today is a big day, of course, for Mark Andrews. Today's a big day for Rashad Bateman. Are they just giving both of those guys, you know, a short week? You know, veteran Mark Andrews, no real need to kind of roll him out, but clearly he's not 100%. I like the Bucs here at plus 105. It's over at Unibet, plus 100 DK, FanDuel, BetMGM, and PointsBet hanging plus 105 as well. Adam Rentcamp in the house. What's going on, sir? Raheem Mostert, anytime TD, easy bet of the week. When I joined the show with Pat Mayo and Tim Anderson on Sunday, the Mayo Media Experience, of course, you can catch it, Mayo Media Network. You can see that on Game Plus Network. I said Raheem first touchdown. I wish I bet it myself. I didn't on the show. I was like, Raheem. He was plus 650. Raheem's been really, really good. I have him ranked as a top 15 running back this week. Rankings can be found over at ftnfantasy.com. Myself, Jeff Ratcliffe. We have Jeremy. We have Adam Pfeiffer. And we have Scott Spratt as well, giving some rankings. Tyler Lochner in there as well. So it's not just one set of rankings. You get a bit of a feel, maybe split some hairs and things like that. But yeah, Raheem Mostert. In a spot against the Detroit Lions, who have done nothing but allowed large runs over the past few years, right? That's all they've done. So I don't know actually if that's out there already. I haven't taken a look at anytime touchdowns or any props just yet. It's still pretty early in the week, but Detroit has given up the second most fantasy points to running backs. And like I said, they've really struggled and they've allowed a lot of touchdowns. Get this, week 1, they allowed actually 4 rushing touchdowns because Jalen Hurts had one, Miles Sanders had one, Kenneth Gainwell had one, and Boston Scott had one. 4 different members of the Philadelphia Eagles had a rushing touchdown against the Lions. In week 2, Antonio Gibson had a rushing touchdown. In week 3, Dalvin Cook had a rushing touchdown. Alexander Madison, a teammate, had a rushing touchdown. In week 4, Rashad Penny had 2 rushing touchdowns. He had a $151 in that game. Ramondre Stevenson did not have a touchdown against Detroit in week 5, but he had 161 rushing yards on 25 attempts. And then last week we saw Zeke get in there twice. So love the call. Love Raheem Mostert and what I've seen from Raheem Mostert really over the last 4 weeks of the season. I know a lot of people are in on Chase Edmonds, but Chase Edmonds is not that type of back. I mean, you can count on one hand how many times this guy's had 14, 15 carries in a game. So Raheem Mostert over the last few weeks, 15 for 69, 18 for 113, 14 for 49, 16 for 79. And last week, he had a season high 5 targets, 4 catches, and 30 receiving yards. So he really has been involved in this offense as a bell cow running back. Raheem Mostert halfway through the season, but one of the better values so far in the NFL. If you have this guy and you've been afraid to maybe roll him out, I wouldn't worry about it. I think you can roll him out with confidence as your RB2 this week, right? Easiest bet of the week. Do we have it? Do you have any odds for it? Let me check it out. Prop Shop's your friend, guys. It's like, Google. You type in Raheem Mostert, no chance. It's not there. Comeback player of the year, 100 to 1. I think off the top of my head now, just thinking of comeback player of the year, I was talking about awards like Sauce Gardner and Saquon and maybe Jalen. Comeback player of the year. Could it be Geno Smith? Should it be Geno Smith? Could it be Saquon? I guess it could be. Geno Smith, comeback player of the year, plus 450. Not bad. This guy had 5 starts in a 6-year span before this season, and 3 of them came last year. As I mentioned yesterday, nobody has more 20-yard passing touchdowns than Geno Smith this season. Nobody has a higher completion percentage than Geno Smith this season. He's playing pretty good. Saquon has got to be favored in that category, right? This is awesome live television. I like when people hang out in the chat and ask questions, and we have a little bit of a fun conversation. Comeback player of the year, he's a massive favorite, Saquon. He's got it locked up unless anything happens to him. We don't want any injuries to happen to him. He's minus 190 over at DK. He's minus 250 over at Bet Rivers. You know what? I saw something the other day that I thought was pretty cool. Not just because I'm an Eagles guy, but I hadn't seen at this point of the season, heading into week 8, I had never seen a quarterback basically favored to lead the NFL in rushing touchdowns. And that's what I saw from Jalen Hurts at plus 650. I think 3 weeks ago on this show, we gave 20 to 1, but I didn't even believe it when I talked about it. I was like, 20 to 1 to lead the league in rushing touchdowns, Jalen Hurts. But heading into last week, nobody had more carries inside the 5 than Jalen Hurts. The Eagles are living inside the red zone this season. Their schedule remains super soft moving forward. He's built to just get those sneaks. I mean, everyone saw the video of him squatting 600 pounds. 1, I don't know if there's really any need of it. Cool, you can do it. 3, 2, it looked like it hurt. It hurt me watching it. 3, don't get hurt doing it. But Saquon is favored, I think, at 450, 5 to 1, roughly in around there. And then Jalen Hurts at 650. I think all the value has gone there, but I wouldn't be shocked if he did lead the way. Daily Handle in the house. Mayo show on a Sunday night was a laugh. Cuss is insane. You crush it means I do appreciate it. Deesh is in here with a comment. Got offered Lockett for Pollard. Hesitant to do it because I lost Brees, but need wide receiver help. 2 quarterback leagues. Okay, that's right. You got Lamar and you got Jalen there. You got Ken Walker. You got Swift. You got Jamal. You got Pollard. And you got the Juniors. J-Rob and B-Rob. Wide receivers, you got JJ, Godwin, Bateman, and Wandell. So you got offered Lockett for Pollard. I'd probably do this. It's all about context. So you could roll out Walker or one of the Detroit backs. Swift comes back this week. You roll out Swift and Walker, and then you have Brian Robinson and J-Rob. All of a sudden, you're a little thin at running back, but once you get through these buys, you can, you have Swift and you have Walker as your guys, and then one of the Robs in there as your flex. And then you roll out JJ, Godwin, Lockett. And then, one of your flex, if you got a flex, you can decide between one of the Robs and then Bateman and Wandell. I would probably do that. Pollard did play ahead of Zeke last week. He has been playing ahead of him for a couple weeks this season. But Zeke still has that goal line role, which is really, really valuable. And last week, we touched on this with Jake here this morning with his show, is that, even though, Pollard kind of moved them up the field a couple times, he did get a goal line rushing attempt, which he couldn't convert. And then they went to Zeke. Like, Zeke came in, and then Zeke had the touchdown. And then at the end of the game, when they were up a couple scores, they didn't need to bring Zeke back in, especially when he suffered that knee injury and he left and he came back. They didn't really need to, but he got the goal line work again and he scored a touchdown. So as you see a little bit later on, Zeke is the most traded player in fantasy sports, certainly in CBS sports leagues over the last 24 hours. And I'm on the side of flipping him. I'm on the side of getting selling high on Zeke. But there is something to be said about that role. And even this week against Chicago as massive favorites, he could find the end zone and he probably gets a couple more goal line touches and he saves his day. And he's a low end RB2. But the change does feel like it's happening, Deesh, almost like Breece Hall, but not quite when it was Breece Hall and Michael Carter. Zeke is still that veteran back and he still does have some value, but I think for you, yeah, Zeke has a knee sprain too, and he's sitting out practice. I mean, I'm not shocked to hear that. And, there's no real reason to have this guy practicing if he's dealing with a knee sprain and things like that. If that worries you a little bit, then maybe you hang on to a guy like Pollard, but I don't think we'll ever see Pollard. I would never feel comfortable starting Pollard as an RB2. Not over Swift and Walker unless Zeke was gone. And one thing we know is DK is going to miss a little bit of time here. So Lockett is going to get some looks. I think I make the move. Usually I'm on the side of keeping the running back. I think I make the move. John Doe, not many out there doing NHL fantasy tips. Props to you. Do people care? I don't know. Maybe people don't care. I care a lot. I was bummed last night. I was pretty bummed this morning too. Like I did a TikTok video and I gave 3 picks and I went 0 for 3. And sometimes you just really have to block out the noise for the comments. Like I understand, like nobody wants losers. I don't want to give losers and have people losing their hard-earned bucks on my silly picks. But I was a little bummed yesterday given that TikTok video. And then you don't want to look at the comments. I look at the comments, 0 for 3 and all this. And I got to bounce back. But yeah, fantasy hockey, that's betting I'm talking about. But fantasy hockey, I'm all about it. I've been playing it for years. It really is the sport that touches home for me. I grew up playing hockey at a young age. So you have any questions at all, fantasy hockey, John Doe, I am here. We have a weekly article over at ftnfantasy.com. I try to get out on weekends, Saturday, it's mostly out there on Sunday. Saturday is such a big night in the NHL. A lot can happen. So I want to just take in that Saturday night and then regroup. And then Sunday, talk about some 4-game streams, players to add and drop. So hopefully that article can help you out as well. But you do have a question here. Really did want to ask this 10-team league. I'm on the bottom 5 of points, but should be 5 and 2. Am I worried? Okay, so this is fantasy football. I'm in the bottom 5 of points, but 5 and 2. Should I be worried? No, I don't think so. At least you're getting those wins. I'm in one league where I have the second most points and I'm in dead last. And that, I'll tell you what, is not a good feeling. You can have the second most points, but you don't get the W's. At least you're getting the W's. Like that is key. The fact that you are in the bottom 5, like for me in the basement, having the second most points in one of my leagues, I just need to churn out a couple wins and get those tiebreakers with the points, right? Hopefully luck, is on your side. But I don't think you should be worried. It's a 10-team league. Things happen. Things happen all the time, in the NFL. Once you get into the playoffs, weekly things, it. We all know it. We're all fantasy football players here. We all know the crazy bad beats, the weeks where you're phenomenal, you have great showings, you would beat everybody in your league but your opponent, and other times you have no business winning, you're projected to lose by 30 points and your team pops off. I wouldn't worry. I'd like to hear your team. If you have some time, John Doe, you're hanging out with us. I know not everybody cares about everyone else's teams, but hopefully you can get something out of it. Share your team and we can take a look at it, but I wouldn't be too worried. Bottom 5 in a 10 team, you're right there, middle of the pack. You're getting those W's. I wouldn't worry about it. Daily handle, don't worry. Telling me not to worry about it. Everybody loses. It's very tough to hit bets at a 75% clip consistently. You'll be back, bro. I appreciate you. Daily handle, always with the support on this show. We do appreciate you. Yeah, we'll bounce back hopefully in the NHL. We had over 200 units in the first 2 seasons, but it's not going well. I'll tell you that. It is not going well. We'll look to bounce back at a couple picks and stuff like that. Can we chuck up that schedule one more time? Let's roll through this actually. Kind of get some thoughts here on potentially some start and sits. So you roll at everybody on Tampa Bay. You roll out Fournette. I know Rashad White has gotten some run. He definitely got some run last week, and Fournette didn't look good running between the tackles. I don't know. I would just chalk up that game as just a dud game for the Bucs. You can run on the Ravens. It's not the same Ravens defense. You can certainly throw on the Ravens. Like Tom Brady, Godwin, Evans. These are guys you're playing. Tight ends. I meant to say this yesterday. It looked like everybody was scrambling for tight end streams. One thing I do want to just say is that if I can give one piece of advice in fantasy football, it's to look ahead at your schedule a little bit. Like I'm not saying like week 14, 15 playoffs, look ahead at that is certainly valuable to look at that. But also like this week, you should be looking at next week. Do you have a quarterback? Do you have a tight end? Do you have a running back on bye next week? And I think people just like, they don't think about that enough. And sometimes I'm guilty of it as well. I don't want to be scrambling here on a Wednesday morning for tight ends and for the leftovers at defense or quarterbacks. Like it's not always easy to plan ahead like that. Sometimes you can't drop a player, but you should be trying to, last week, if you needed a tight end and you knew Travis Kelce was going to be on bye, it's easy to say this now. And Joku goes down in the game last week, and now you need a tight end, so you didn't know you would need one potentially. But try to plan ahead. Try to maybe at this time of the year, try to have two defenses that you like. If there's a defense that you really like this week, you love the matchup, but you don't love it in week 10, look ahead at week 10. If there's a defense, that's on the waiver wire that is in a really good spot in week 10, grab them now, get ahead. It's okay. At the start of the season, I don't love to roster two quarterbacks and two defenses and two tight ends. Like so much can change. Like who would have thought at this point of the season that the Bears would have the same record as the Bucs and the Packers? Like just not Seahawks first division, Giants right there. Like we wouldn't think that things change so quickly in the NFL. And Eric said it great yesterday on Set Bet Spike. And people always look at the schedule at the start of the season when they draft. And it's silly because things do change a lot. But try to plan ahead at this point of the season. Have a second quarterback potentially. Don't want to be fighting to the waiver wire. If your guy goes down, you don't want to be fighting. Your season could be lost. Have a second tight end potentially. Have a second defense in really good spots. So you're not rushing to the waiver wire with some of these tight ends. I just thought about that when I saw the Bucs on that schedule. Because Cade Otton is a guy that I do like this week as a potential streaming option at the tight end position. Just maybe try to plan ahead for certain things. We'll break and we'll bring that schedule back up. I'm going to roll through it's still early, but roll through my thoughts on not only picks, but also like some start and sit options, some tough decisions that you may have through that. And then we will look at the most added and dropped in trades. And I always try to get a bit of you can get some buy low and sell high targets out of that because you get a feel of what people think about certain players, whether they like them or not. They're dropping them, they're cutting ties early. There are two names in particular for wide receivers that were cut. I'm not surprised, but at the same time, I feel like they shouldn't be dropped. And if you see them on your waiver wire, I think they could be interesting down the stretch. I don't know if they're going to be league winners, but they could be difference makers for you moving forward. So we'll talk about that. Mean Streets continues here on Game Plus Network.
I can't say enough about what we've got going on over at FTNBets.com.
At FTN Bets, your bankroll can be profitable. With the FTN Bet Tracker, you can tell your favorite experts across all sports, including the NFL, NBA, and Major League Baseball.
Welcome back to Mean Streets here on Game Plus Network. I'm your host, Chris Meaney.
And with our premium content, you can take your bets to the next level. Only $49.99 a month. Use the tools the pros use at FTN. Our betting models run over 100,000 simulations of every game, with sides and totals in the NFL, the NBA, and more. Use the home run predictor to see who'll hit a bomb deep. Our NFL player projections will make you a DFS king. And the FTN Prop Shop always finds the best odds for your player props. All tools, projections, and models are powered by FTN Data.
Welcome back in. Tyler, let's bring up that week 8 schedule and roll through it officially this time. So as I said off the top, you roll out your guys in Tampa Bay. I have no problem for Fournette. I still think Rashad White is a really good handcuff. And also, one thing I will say is that Gus Edwards I have ranked as a low end RB2. It is a short week. You know, the Bucs have allowed the 6th fewest fantasy points to running backs, but I think he could be in for a lot of touches in this game. And we saw last week the Carolina backfield had a pretty strong performance, did they not? Against this run defense. They gave up a lot of rushing yards, almost 170 rushing yards combined between the two. I think it was like actually almost 180 between those two. We saw CEH against Tampa Bay earlier this season as well, churn out nearly 100 yards. Mark Ingram at the start of the season, 10 carries, roughly 50 yards and things like that. So decent efficiency against the Bucs, but you know, Gus is not going to catch a lot of passes. Kenyon Drake may catch a couple passes this week, but I would roll out Gus Edwards as a low end RB2 or a flex. You know, in Denver and Jacksonville, it does sound like Russell Wilson's going to return this week. I got Russ and Trevor Lawrence in one league. I don't honestly, as of right now, I think I would play Trevor Lawrence over Russell Wilson just because I think he has, you know, Russ did run a little bit more, or he has ran a little bit more of his past couple of starts. But one thing I like that I've seen from Trevor Lawrence is that he is calling his own number inside the 5. He's acted as the goal line back. You're starting Travis Etienne. I would try to avoid both running backs here. I will have Melvin Gordon ranked 1 spot or 2 spots. I think I actually have him 3 spots ahead of Latavius Murray. Cortland Sutton, I would play Cortland Sutton as long as Russ is coming back here. Jerry Judy's a flex play. You know, Dulcich could be that tight end that you need a tight end. He could be a guy there for you. I think I get this weird feeling about Cade Otton and Will Dissly this week. Evan Ingram has been decent on the other side of this matchup as well. But Christian Kirk, you're certainly starting there. Carolina, I do have Foreman ranked 2 spots ahead of Chuba Hubbard. I know Chuba played ahead of him to start before he left with an injury. And I know he's acted as the true backup for CMC and, you know, inside this offense, which is obviously different with Rule gone. But last year, Chuba, you know, he filled in for CMC and he did an okay job. He had some moments and things like that. But as I've said a few times on this show, that I do believe Foreman has the higher ceiling. I think he's the better running back. And I think he's going to have the pass catching role. Now, I think the Panthers actually can hang around in this 6-point spread. I mean, Atlanta's not good enough, I don't think, to be favored by 6. I know they've won some games this year, but this is a team that they're just going to run the rock. They showed us that they're not going to throw and push the pace even when they're down in football games. So it's not like Algier has been fantastic. I think he may be the safer play than those 2 Carolina running backs just because he doesn't really have to compete. Huntley's had a couple touches here and there. They just continue to hand the ball to Tyler Algier. Like, here you go, down 14, doesn't matter. Here you go, 3rd and 45. Here you go. Tyler Algier, goal line work there too. They're all in the same kind of tier for me. Algier, Foreman, and Chuba Hubbard. You could do better. But I understand the landscape of the running back position with injuries and bye weeks and things like that. I would rank them Foreman, Algier, and Chuba. They're all kind of flex plays for me. And DJ Moore, you know what? DJ Moore, I think there was a question here yesterday about DJ. You know, this is the time to sell him if you're not a big believer off the big week, but no Robbie, no CMC. Volume is going to be there for DJ Moore. There's not a lot else going on there. We really saw we saw Terrace Marshall last week kind of not pop off, but I mean, he got some run. It was like a season high day for him, which is not saying a whole lot. I'd like to see him start to get some run, right? I mean, look good at LSU. I think he's got something to offer. This has been like bad reports since he's entered the league. You can't pick up the playbook and things like that. But let's see what they got with him. Other than that, it's really the DJ Moore show. And maybe these 2 running backs are going to run the rock there quite a bit moving forward. Chicago and Dallas, you know, Khalil Herbert is definitely involved. I think that Montgomery is definitely the lead there, but they may ride the hot hand with both of those running backs. They could go Montgomery, just like last week. It was Montgomery and it was Khalil. They were both right there. We have Montgomery for 14 carries and Khalil for 12 carries. It's not a great matchup at all. Justin Fields did a good job last week. I thought he looked really good against Bill Belichick and the New England Patriots. But this is a different beast in the Dallas Cowboys and get pressure off the quarterback. It's a bad spot for everybody in Chicago. I think Mooney's just like a flex play. CeeDee Lamb, Dalton Schultz is a guy, you know, he showed up last week, and this is what I expected anyways when Dak would be under center. Dalton Schultz, would be a factor. I would play him over these other tight ends that we're streaming, like, Dulcich and Ingram and Disley and Kate Otten. I would play Dalton Schultz over those guys. Michael Gallup, I would not start, but I don't think I would drop him in a 12 team. Should I trade Zeke for ETN? Snags 412. Absolutely. I would do it. I would trade Zeke for ETN. That backfield is his. He looks good, young, fresh, catching balls out of the backfield, 100% of the rushing attempts last week. Just the only thing that I will say about Travis Etienne is, and maybe it's nothing, because he did get some goal line work last week and he scored a touchdown. He did fumble, but they continued to go back to him. Maybe they thought that they wanted to keep James Robinson fresh, and he was a trade candidate, and an injury happened to open up the door. But yeah, I would make that move. Trade Zeke for Travis Etienne. Zeke is fighting there with Pollard. So give me Zeke. Go back to that schedule. I'll maybe be a little bit quicker about my thoughts and rapid fire through some stuff. I think the Broncos cover that 3.5 too, by the way. I think the Panthers cover that 6. I would, that's a lot of points for the Cowboys at 10. I kind of have a lean to Chicago, kind of not hanging around, but maybe a backdoor thing there. 10 is a lot of points, even for the boys at home. And I know their defense is really good and they'll create some turnovers. It's a lot of points. I like Miami there with the 3. You're starting everybody in Miami. Tua is a decent super flex option there. For the Detroit side of things, if Swift is active and he's playing, I would roll the dice and I would play him, but I have him ranked at RB 16, like just assuming that he's active. If he's not, Jamal Williams, you can play him, but Amon-Ra you're playing, Hawkinson you're playing, stash Jameson Williams if you can. Arizona, Connor, kind of same deal as Swift. I don't have him ranked as high as like in the low 20s, high teens for me. I don't fully trust it. It could be like a Damian Harris thing where, yeah, he's active, but he's not a lot of run. And Eno's looked pretty good. He looked decent actually last week, so Eno could be sprinkled in. I think he deserves a couple more touches. The Vikings side of things, you're rolling out everybody there. I would even play Adam Thielen as like a flex wide receiver if you need the help there. The Raiders, like Jacobs, there's no question with Josh Jacobs. I think this could be a Hunter Renfro game. Adams is going to eat and he's going to get his as well. On the Saints side of things, like Olave is a top 12, top 13 wide receiver for me. As long as Landry is, if Landry's not playing and Michael Thomas is not playing, like Olave is just, he's starting with confidence. It's just really him and Alvin Kamara out of the backfield. I like the Raiders in that game. I'm willing to take them on the money line, but I do think that they covered the 3. And I actually like the Cardinals at the plus 3.5 there to kind of hang around in that game. I like the Pats to bounce back. It's low scoring game, a lot of runs from everybody. I don't think that either team is going to have a lot of success moving with football. Jets defense, pretty solid. I think the Pats could bounce back. Zach Wilson hasn't shown us a whole lot. If Corey Davis doesn't play, maybe Elijah Moore, is active, but I have a hard time trusting him, to be honest with you. I have a hard time trusting any wide receiver in that game. Michael Carter could be in for 20 plus touches. I would not start James Robinson. It could just take some time, maybe 2 weeks, maybe out of the bye. They got the Bills next week and then a bye, maybe James Robinson that week, but I wouldn't imagine he's, I know it's not a shorter time with the team like CMC. I don't want to compare the two, but CMC didn't get a whole lot of run. I don't think James Robinson, even with the week with the team, will get a lot of run. I think you can start Carter. I always start Ramondre over him, and I'm a little hesitant to roll out Damian Harris. I think he'll get a little bit more run, but Carter over Harris for me. You start Najee. Pickens, this is a really tough spot for everybody with the Steelers against the Eagles. The one thing is Pickens won't have to deal with Darius Slay. Deontay Johnson will have to deal with Darius Slay, and Pickens will have to deal with Bradbury. Either way, it's not a good spot for anybody. Najee Harris is not a good spot. I have him in the low 20s. He is a flex running back. He's one of the early midseason busts for sure. Him and Kyle Pitts are right there. Everybody you're rolling out in Philadelphia. Goddard, Smith, AJ, and Miles Sanders. Tennessee Titans, I like this over 3.5 against the Texans. The Texans can't stop the run. That's it. They just can't stop the run. And Derrick Henry has had massive games against the Houston Texans over the past couple weeks. And I'll probably stay away from his receiving yard prop this week. I got burned last week by it, even though he had 3 catches and needed a couple more yards. He has been involved through the air. He may not need to be this week against the Texans. And, if there's no Nico Collins, I would start Brendan Cooks, and that's basically it. I still think that Cooks could get dealt. And if you're the Texans, why not trade him? Heck, trade him to the Titans. Who cares if he's inside the division? Titans could use a guy like Cooks there. Washington Commanders and the Indianapolis Colts. This line has definitely changed. That's one for sure. I put yesterday 3.5 when the quarterback change was announced, the benching. Let's just get you live odds here on this game. There's no way that's It's 2.5 now. The Colts are favored 2.5, 3 in some spots. I think Ellinger could open up the offense just a little bit. When I say that, I don't mean that this offense is going to be like a top 10 offense. The reason I say it is because he's mobile. He's mobile. He had 1,000 rushing yards in his last 2 years. Matt Ryan had led the NFL in interceptions and fumbles and in sacks. And he's just a statue. Great quarterback, former MVP. Yeah, great year, great career. But Ellinger, who knows who the guy's going to be? I would play Pittman as a low end wide receiver too. I think he's quarterback proof. But I'm not ready to say that it's certainly going to be Paris Campbell over Alec Pierce. If he is mobile and he's moving around and he's extending plays, that I believe does benefit Alec Pierce as the deep threat guy inside this offense. But I would just be a little hesitant to roll out those two wide receivers. I will have Campbell ranked ahead of Pierce because of what I've seen over the past couple weeks, but I'm not feeling great about starting him on my roster, but I would start Pittman. I think what we'll see is a lot from Taylor. Last week he had 7 or 8 grabs. He's going to have a lot of touches out of the backfield, get back to 20 plus touches, keep it simple for the young quarterback, and maybe a couple passes here and there. But I think Washington with Heineke, I think Heineke is good for this offense. It's good for Terry McLaurin. We saw it last week. Antonio Gibson was kind of sprinkled in there. I think Washington covers the game. And we'll roll through the last couple here quick before we bounce. I see some questions, guys. I'll get to it here in the next block. San Fran is, I think it's 7 straight regular season wins, 6 or 7 against McVay and company. I'm not shocked that they're favored. And I do see the Jimmy G stuff here. Yeah, Jimmy G is definitely trending up, right? You add CMC to that offense. All of a sudden you have 4 unbelievable pass catchers that are explosive when they have the ball in their hands. Debo, Ayuk, George Kittle. With Williams back on the line, Kittle running more routes, and then CMC. I don't know if he's a good start this week in a single quarterback league, but he's definitely a good start in Superflex, and he's somebody to, if you're hurting at the quarterback position, like rest of the season, Jimmy G, Russell Wilson, give me Jimmy G. Rest of the season, Jimmy G, Matthew Stafford, give me Jimmy G. I'm definitely feeling you guys on the Jimmy G trending up here. There's no question about that. And I do like the Niners in this game to bounce back, even with McVay coming off the bye. The Giants +3 and the Seahawks, Seattle at home. I just give me the team that just keeps finding ways to win games. And the Giants, Wan'Dell's a start. Tyler Lockett's a start. Marquise Goodwin is like a desperate play at the wide receiver position. I don't think he'll be too consistent when DK is sidelined. The Bills and the Packers, I don't think I'm starting anybody in Green Bay other than Aaron Jones. And for the Buffalo, you can roll out everybody. Maybe not Isaiah McKenzie, but Gabe Davis. I would play Gabe Davis over Deebo Samuel, for example, in a 12-team or like an 8 or a 10-team league. And then I think the Bengals covered the 3 there, starting everybody, Tyler Boyd included, and maybe Donovan Peoples-Jones if you're hurting, you're in a tough spot there at the wide receiver position. All right, 3 segments in, 34 minutes. We have about 12 minutes left in the show and 3 more segments. I do have some hockey picks for you. So when we get back, we'll address some of these questions, and then we'll take a look at the most added, dropped, and traded players. We're finally going to get to that. Hang tight. Thanks for your patience. We'll be back here in a couple. Let's take a look at the most added players in Yahoo leagues over the last 24 hours. I know some people have their waivers run here tonight, but yeah, I think the standard would be last night. So Gus Edwards up at the top. No real surprise here. Greg Dulcich again. Past couple weeks has been some targets, whether it's been Russ or Ripon. It doesn't really seem to matter. I don't feel super great about rolling him out, honestly. I still have this feeling about K-Dot and Will Dissly. I think he could get a little bit of an uptick. He could be the second option in the passing game behind Tyler Lockett here this weekend against the Giants. Daniel Jones has been great. He comes with a safe floor. I had the conversation with Jake. He asked me if I would start Daniel Jones and Tom Brady. I would start Tom Brady. I shoot for upside, but Tom Brady doesn't have the same floor that Daniel Jones has from a fantasy standpoint because he doesn't run. So when Tom Brady has a bad game, like he did last week, he has like 2 to 4 fantasy points. But when Daniel Jones has a bad game, like he has 16 fantasy points. Like over the past couple of weeks, like 28 fantasy points. He threw for 202 yards and he had 1 touchdown last week. In week 4, he had 71 passing yards with 0 touchdowns and 21 fantasy points. In week 5 against the Packers, he had 217 passing yards and 0 touchdowns. He had 12 fantasy points. In week 3 against the Boys, he had 169 passing yards and 0 touchdowns. He had 14 fantasy points. If Tom Brady has 200 passing yards and 0 touchdowns, he has 4 fantasy points. That's it. He's not doing it. So I get the Jones pickup. I've been rolling out in a 16-team league. Was messing around with guys like Jameis Winston and Andy Dalton. And just like, you know what? I'm just going to take the high floor guy here in Daniel Jones. And maybe somebody can, catch a pass or two other than Darius Slayton. Man, tough go for Daniel Bellinger. The guy broke his orbital and got poked in the eye. Man, he was starting to trend up. Michael Carter. What did we say on this show 4 weeks ago? Michael Carter was the most dropped player in fantasy football, and that's a mistake. I know an injury happened, but guys, this is the NFL. Things happen, unfortunately. Like nobody wanted Breece Hall to get hurt. These things happen, but it's no surprise to see a guy most dropped here on the most added just within a couple weeks. Foreman, Marquise Goodwin's here. Paris Campbell kind of touched on both of those guys in the last block. Chuba Hubbard, Foreman ahead of Chuba Hubbard, but it was really close when I was taking a look at the most added. It was just, within 100 pickups or so. Irv Smith, I think Irv Smith is a better tight end streaming option than Dulcich. Actually, the Arizona Cardinals really, really struggle against tight ends. They've allowed the second most fantasy points to them. And Rondell Robinson's a guy we've been talking about a couple weeks. This is a nice little pickup there. And I would start him this week. I would start him over any Giant or any Jets or any Patriots wide receiver. Maybe Jacoby Myers over him, maybe, but I don't know, man. Like that's is he gonna have to deal with Sauce? I'm gonna have to deal with Sauce. That's an issue. Most dropped. Let's take a look at the most dropped from Yahoo Sports, 24 hours. Matt Ryan, no surprise. Kenyon Drake. I kind of get this, but again, right? Another injury. This probably is like these drops are probably 8-team and 10-team leagues. Like I get it. In an 8-team or a 10-team, I don't want Drake. I don't want Jeff Wilson. I don't want Pacheco. I don't want these running backs. But it is, again, next man up. Who's the handcuff for CMC? Who's the handcuff for Gus Edwards with J.K. Dobbins out for the next 4 to 6 weeks? I mean, Gus played one NFL game here in the last year and a half. Short week. You just don't know. You just don't know, guys. Romeo Dubs, I get it. He's giving up dubs. He's been giving up donuts, zeros. Nothing to it. Tanyan, kind of get it too. I think that Tanyan could fall into a few targets this week as their 10-point dogs. Who's Rodgers throwing the football to? This will be the week where they run the rock. This will be the week that Green Bay runs the football because they want to keep Josh Allen off the field. They can't get any rhythm offensively. They're going to run the football this week, and that's the way to actually beat the Bills. If there's one weakness on this Bills team, it is running the ball against Buffalo. You can do it. We've seen it now for the past couple of years. That's the one weakness that the Bills have. And if you're Green Bay, you probably want to run the rock with your 2 running backs and keep Josh Allen off the field and watch them have success moving the football because they're running the rock. That's something I've been trying to preach. Like, yeah, Rodgers, friend of the show. There's no chance. This guy's not watching Mean Streets. He probably should. Rodgers, run the ball, bud. Run the ball with those 2 running backs. But we could see Tanyan have a few more targets. There's a couple other guys on this list I wanted to, before we get out of here. Alec Pierce, I get it. It does pain me. Rondell Moore and Michael Gallup shouldn't be dropped. Neither of these guys should be dropped. I know Gallup put up a 0. It's just one game there. It was just one game. They ran the ball against Detroit. That's it. Dallas is going to get in situations where they're going to have to pass the ball a little bit more. I understand the defense is really good and they should lean on 2 running backs that they have and run the ball. But Michael Gallup is good. I think that there's value there. Again, like I said last segment, I wouldn't be starting him. But if I see him on the waiver wire, I'm going to pick him up. Rondell Moore as well. It was a lot of Hopkins. But Rondell could be the number 2 inside this offense. I know Robbie Anderson is there as a deep threat guy, but Rondell is another guy that I would maybe pick up and stash if I could. We'll break and take a look at the most traded. We can get some buy lows and some sell high candidates out of there, and then we will wrap up with some NHL stuff. And I see some people. There's a question from Tyler: Wandell or DJ Moore? Is that this week or all rest of the season? Rest of the season, it's DJ Moore. And this week I would roll out DJ Moore too. I would. I think DJ Moore is a decent buy low candidate. And at the same time, I think you could sell him on just last week, but volume is king. And I think he's going to get it. I think he's going to get it without CMC and Robbie Anderson there. So I don't think DJ Moore is going to be a wide receiver 2 like he was drafted, but I think he could be a solid flex. And that's all I kind of view Wan'Dale Robinson as too. I'm not getting crazy as like a wide receiver 2, 3. I think he's a solid flex. I think DJ Moore's got a higher ceiling. All right, we'll break and we'll take a look at the most traded players on Mean Streets. Keep her locked. Welcome back, and let's take a look at the most traded players in CBS Sports. Get a little bit of a feel of where how people feel honestly about certain players here. Wow, my screen just like went away for a second, so that's kind of a little bit of a start there. Zeke, most traded. I agree. Trade him. Najee, trade him. Clyde Edwards-Helaire, I'd actually buy. People are just, they don't like him. They like Pacheco. He's on a buy. You could have him. You could get him this week if you need a running back. Take a look at a team who needs a running back this week. They need a win this week. You could probably get Clyde Edwards-Helaire very, very cheap. Brian Robinson, I'd be into buying him, but it's kind of like I'm not super excited about him. I'll just say that. Like I would be on the side of getting him if I could, but he's not somebody that I'm really interested in grabbing. James Robinson, I think the next couple weeks will be pretty quiet. This week, if people don't like James Robinson, I don't think they'll like him even less after this week when I don't feel like he'll touch the ball that much. Jonathan Taylor may be one of the best buy low candidates in the game. There's no question. He hasn't looked great to start the season, the quarterback change. There's a lot of uncertainty. People are unsure. The offensive line hasn't looked great. He's going to get a lot of touches. Like I said, I think they'll keep it simple for Ellinger. And, sometimes with these young quarterbacks, they have a history of kind of checking it off. You could see some garbage time stuff there. The defense has a lot of holes right now. And we know Shaq Leonard, right? The defense is just is no good without the heartbeat of it. And that's Shaquille Leonard. Travis Etienne. Oh my goodness. Who is selling Travis Etienne? I guess now it would be the time, right? Like it's his backfield. You could probably get a decent haul for him. That question earlier, I would definitely rather Travis Etienne than Zeke. So that's a trade that's happened. Darrell Henderson, Kareem Hunt, AJ Dillon. I still am in the camp of landing AJ Dillon, but that's a loss that I may really just have to absolutely own significantly when the season is wrapped up, because I was definitely in on AJ Dillon. I think at some point Green Bay figures it out that they have to run the rock, but Kareem Hunt, he's an interesting buy low, just because I feel like he could get traded in a certain spot, but Kareem Hunt is nothing more than a flex as long as he's a member of the Cleveland Browns and Nick Chubb is on the squad. Any other stuff? Wandell or Gallup? I would go Wandell there. That's a great question. I would go Wandell, but it's actually really close to me. I do believe in the skill set of Michael Gallup. Any other stuff here from other questions that we could go? You know what? Daily Handle, I would lean Cousins over Jimmy G. I think Jimmy G the rest of the season, but against the Rams, they've kind of given him some fits. I would go Cousins in this spot, coming off the bye. You got Justin Jefferson there. Justin Jefferson could have a big day against Arizona. John Doe, big mistake for people dropping Njoku. Yeah, I agree. If you can hold David Njoku, the tight end position is very, very weak. I view him as a top 10 tight end the rest of the way, even missing a couple weeks. I think that's a good call, Joe. If you can afford to hang on to him, fill the gaps where you can here and there. But I would try to hold on to him where I can. Should I drop Labatt for Molson? Yeah, I would. I like Molson more than Labatt. Good question there, George. Griffin, I got offered CMC and Wandell for Jones and Waddle in a 10-team league. Standard PPR. What do I do? I got offered CMC and Wandell. Wandell for Jones and Waddle. Oh my goodness, that's a really good question. I gotta get out of here. Jones, Wandell. I think I would take Jones and Waddle. Yeah, I get Wandell is trending up here, but I don't think he has a high ceiling. I think Waddle definitely over him, and I don't think CMC and Jones. I don't think that's a huge gap, to be honest. I really don't. So the best player in the deal is CMC, but I like the other side of it for you. I would keep what you got there. Griffin, appreciate the question. Break, one more segment, some hockey props. We're going to bounce back tonight. We'll be back in a couple. All right, only 3 games in the NHL here tonight. I got a couple shot props here with you. I'm going to lead with Jordan Kyrou of the St. Louis Blues. I really like Kyrou as a player. He's not afraid to shoot the puck. He's got a lot of skill set. The odds are changing. A couple weeks ago, actually, at the start of the season, we were getting plus money on Jordan Kyrou. But this is a guy who has 3+ shots in 4 straight games. He did it the other night against the Edmonton Oilers. He played a season high 21 minutes. He had 3 shots in that game. He leads the Blues in shot attempts with 25 and 14 shots overall. The Blues haven't played a lot of games this season, so those numbers are pretty low. But Pavel Buchnevich was placed on IR. That does benefit a guy like Jordan Kyrou, more minutes, more power play minutes as well. So taking the over 2.5 minus 137 over at Bet Rivers. A couple other shot props that I do like. Sticking inside the same game, Evander Kane is one player that I'm taking a look at. 41 shot attempts at 5-5 is the 8th most in the NHL. And guys ahead of him have played 7 and 8 games. He's only played 6 games, 30 shots in 6 games, 9 shots in his last game, 5+ shots in 4 of his last 5. A matchup here against the Blues. They have allowed the 8th most shots and the 8th most shot attempts. Steven Stamkos, plus money play here. He has 4+ shots in 6 of his 7 games, 5+ in 4 games, including last night. I know it's a second half of a back-to-back, but the Ducks have allowed the 2nd most shot attempts and the most shots at 5-5 per 60 this season. A couple power plays, and Steven Stamkos is there. It didn't look like we'd get him yesterday. That was one of the rare shot props that we got last night, but he was also plus money. It's just a power play or two when he gets there, and that's what happened last night at a power play late in the game when he had 3 shots on that power play. And then Troy Terry is cleared in 4 of his 6. One home game this season where he had 4 shots. And another guy that's not on this list that I actually like ahead of Terry and Stamkos is Vincent Trocheck. Vincent Trocheck is cleared in 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 of his games this season. 2.5 shots for Vincent Trocheck. Oh, he is on the list. Bats for me. He's up at the top of the list. My goodness, just pay attention. John, I'll get to that question in the comments section. Good luck tonight on the ice. Let's get a couple winners. We'll be back tomorrow. Have a good one. Cheers.